Man, look at the sky reflecting off the ocean, man. That's a hot day. Oh.
Hey, you. Good evening and morning to you. It's 3.23. It's dope. It's rough. It's a beautiful mess that might take some time to polish up. Let's just jump right in and get into the good, the bad, and the pending. Like up, sub up, and ring up like a boss. All the interface elements give the game a facelift and make the game feel new again. That new game smell is intoxicating. The visor elements make it easy for you to tell if your helmet is on, which is nice, especially if you've seen how many deaths by not wearing a helmet there are out there. There's also no more mistaking if your landing gear, Copion mode, or VTOL are on, with the HUD elements making them very clear. Crime stat notification is much easier to see and identify how much dirt you done now. Mobi-Glass is more of a complete tool now. I won't go into depth, but the visual eye candy is great. The drop-down menus clean up the contracts manager nicely, and it feels kind of fun to use, like when you get a new device in real life. Won't go into the character creator, except to say it's nice to be able to build a character that more reflects yourself or your creative tastes. I won't spoil the experience for you. EVA is a blast. I've been super excited about the change, then my buddy has been slowly swaying me to feel it's a bit unrealistic looking. Maybe it is. I'm not even sure anymore, but either way, it is way better an experience to use. The old EVA didn't look bad. It's more like that old school upright look that you've seen in NASA footage and movies. After trying 323, the old EVA feels stiff, kind of clunky, and worse, it's a mess trying to move through small spaces. EVA 2 is so much more agile. You can turn, change directions, and thread the needle like a boss. It's just a much more suitable, beautiful way to navigate interiors and free fall instead of slapping in the walls with the camera going nuts. Visually, I'd have preferred a more relaxed looking posture like Hancock, but then it had to contextually straighten out to get through tighter spaces. As it is, you'll dig it so much more than the old way, especially when coming in for a landing. The new water is the hotness. You can create waves and wakes in your ship and on foot. I haven't been able to create trenches of displaced water as dramatic as in Citizen because I'm a little scared to get too close in a ship because I've exploded after getting too close even though I wasn't touching it. That needs a looking at. I hope explosions aren't the intent going forward. This should be at worst a soft death that you can recover from with a tow from the SRV. One thing I didn't realize going in is that the water creates real-time reflections. I've heard but not seen that your ship is reflected too, so let us know if you've seen that. Physical shopping had become a game of trying to find the right angle to try to make a purchase. If it didn't come at a soda at just the right angle, you'd have to try again from another angle. Now the F button prompt pops up at whatever you're looking at and you just hold F down till the transaction's complete. Only problem so far is that instead of picking it up with your hand, it goes into the local inventory. Unless I'm missing something here. Let me know in the comments if there's a way to do that. The LODs are crazy. Besides seeing POIs from much longer distances, you can see every planet from everywhere. Distribution centers are huge. I'll save them for another video because at this point I haven't been able to do much with them besides explore the bottom level, which is easy to get lost in. You can take on various FPS missions there, interior and exterior, but various bugs have kept me from getting too far. Once was a bug that basically made all of standing into an armistice zone and you couldn't pull your weapon out anywhere, but that's been fixed up. Last run falling through the planet fixed me up real good, so there's some work to do. I want a pet Copion, be like a Klingon Targ for your boy. Be cool to have him guarding your player bases, maybe have bird feeders to attract mercs, which I've not found in game yet, so if you know where they are, let us know. The pack of Copions I ran up on were immortal and unable to leave where they spawned at, but like any good wildlife expert, I got too close and nature took its course. FPS Combat is pretty live. Going from an old arcade shooting gallery to seeing enemies sprint around a corner catches you off guard and makes it more exciting. I didn't think I'd use dynamic crosshairs much, but I find myself naturally using it like it's been in game for years. It's perfect when you need a quick spray without aiming, since aiming down sight isn't as quick as it is in 3.22. Being able to break a reload animation to sprint away is just what the witch doctor ordered. I thought backpack reloading would take longer, leaving you vulnerable for a good amount of time, but it's actually fairly quick. Ammo repooling does take a long time, but it's super useful for conserving rounds. I don't know about you, but when I'd have 2 or 3 rounds left in the mag, I just fire them off to get rid of the magazine. Now you don't have to worry about partial mags because you can just hit left alt +1 to combine all the crumbs into a single magazine. So one less reason to leave the space stations littered with discarded magazines. I didn't get to progress through to the higher levels, but even the very low risk targets have some fight to them. The enemies aren't just out sightseeing while you're hitting them with the da-da-da-da-da. While you tagging one of them, their wingmate will put pressure on you, which for the first time really requires you to put some shield management to work. The reduced speed of master mode shrinks the combat distances, and fighting for position out of reach of guns and enemy wingmen are more important than ever now. Combat's more engaging, demanding, and dynamic. There's sub-targeting available now, but I wasn't able to get to that, so you have to tell me how you dig it. I'm anxious to try ship combat with more difficult targets, but even at lower levels, you'll feel the difference right away. So if you haven't heard, persistent hangars and freight elevators aren't ready yet, so they're being pushed back to the 3.23.x patch. Of course, it's gonna be some disappointment, but if it ain't ready, it ain't ready. But it's damn near ready, so you won't have to be impatient for very long. And 3.23 is still filled to the brim with that new. Work on the clouds has cleaned up the bulk of the noise in the clouds with the higher settings, and if your PC doesn't blow up with the reference/photo settings, they are a sight to behold. Not quite Microsoft Flight Simulator level, but they look good. The new looting UI takes some getting used to. It's completely different than just dragging things from one box to the other, but once you get it, it makes looting bodies super quick. Weirdly, you can't seem to pick up another gun if you already have 2 on your backpack, so you better bring a box. Also, you gotta switch over to the normal inventory system if you want to throw stuff in your ship or into boxes. The prone animations are about as fluid as you can get. No matter what position you find yourself in, you can aim your weapon and adjust your body to suit the situation. Tobii Eye Tracker is incredibly crisp now. The movement always felt a bit exaggerated to me, but now it's so perfectly in sync with your head movements, it's crazy. The update did disable my eye movement, and there's a million settings to look through, plus using their own specific terms. It's gonna take some time to figure out how to get that back on. The star map portion of the new map is awesome, visually and functionally. It did feel a little temperamental setting routes sometimes, but that's been cleaned up and it's an exciting change. Being able to type in a search for a location, I can't say enough how useful that is. One unannounced change that was included is instead of arriving and following 2 and 3 OM points to a surface POI, you arrive at the planet, and if the location's on the far side, the next jump in the route is just one spline jump around it. Obviously, stations and other satellites still require the OM jumps, but surface POIs have less steps in the routes now. But one request would be to add a long press to F2 so that we can choose to go directly to the star system level of the map instead of having to start at the ship level and then zooming out. Minimap is in the early state. Ships, landing zones, space stations have minimap functionality, but not much beyond that. They will be adding in more locations with each patch, but for the moment they're cool to look at and play with for a bit, but not something anybody would depend on except new players who don't know their way around the space stations and cities, and my boy Captain Rico. But newbies can tap R to make a path they can follow to the location they want to get to. P4 AR used to look hot, and now he's wearing a house robe with curlers in his hair and product on his face. I'm sure a lot of folks will disagree, but visually it's been changed from the swaggy shooter with buttons and a little screen and the bulk of an AR to a submachine looking paintball spitter. I'm assuming it was done to make it look more like the actual SMG of the same brand, which makes it confusing to differentiate. It's one thing I'm not a fan of in the verse, making things of the same brand into small, medium, and large duplicates of each other. I've had to redo this section a few times because every new build and hotfix performance improves. It's gone from insanely laggy, low frame rate to not too far from being on par with live for the most part. There's still some pretty bad performing areas, especially planet services, which can get down into the teens for frame rate. Depending on the shard, lag can be incredibly bad. Sometimes as bad as a minute or so to open an elevator door. It's not like that all the time, but in the wrong shard, it's present enough to drain your spirit a little bit. Everything takes time to be cleaned up and tip top, but this can't come fast enough. Vulcan is a mixed bag at this point. It varies from user to user, but some have reported extremely higher frame rates with much higher stuttering, and others like my guy G-Roads going gray waiting for the shaders to compile. For me, I went from 19 frames a second near a distribution center on Hurston with the wind blowing particles everywhere to 35 frames after switching to Vulcan. Right now, this comes with some caveats at this early stage, like some of the UI breaking. Combining DLSS with Vulcan got me up to 52 frames a second in the same area, so Vulcan has a bright future ahead of it, especially when they turn on multi-threading and call the other cores in from their smoke breaks. Then the difference should be even more dramatic. Upscaling in DX11 is not the business. It's blurry, it's not a big jump in frames, it's probably not your cup of Earl Grey, but like I mentioned earlier, they work with Vulcan much better. Chat keeps changing and had a window around it which kind of cluttered up the screen, but that's been removed. Right now it doesn't always stay at the bottom of the feed where the new chats come in. Not sure where it's gonna land by the time it gets to live, so we'll just have to wait and see. Master modes is an interesting addition. If you don't do combat, then it's hard to see any advantages or disadvantages. It just kind of feels like an extra step, but once you get into combat, whether aggressively or unwilling, it's a brave new world. If you're not looking for no smoke, but combat comes looking for you anyway, each click of the B button punctuates the life or death aspect of it. Survivability depends on the abilities of your ship. If you're in SCM mode, you got your shields and weapons standing by, but if you know an instigator will eventually get through your shields and you cut to run by turning on nav mode, you got this ramp up period before you swap to nav mode and get moving quicker. And during that transition, your shields are falling and you got incoming fire, making clean getaways less likely. So bugging out as soon as you see a red target are the standing orders if you want to make it out completely intact. At first, nav mode addressed something that a lot of people have always found awkward all these years. We've always had to have our quantum drive spooling up for a jump in order to see an overlay of the location we're flying to. We've gotten used to it, but somewhere in the back of the mind, it's always been a tiny bit distracting to have that drive going with the sound effects running. In the earlier 323 builds, you could see the location overlays while in nav flight mode. That's been changed back to how it's always been, which is too bad because it felt more natural and nice. Something I didn't notice till I was damn near wrapping the vid up is that you use up oxygen. I went out to EVA for maybe 10-15 minutes and then I got into the ship and my oxygen is down to the lower 80s%. As I'm walking, my ship must have pockets of no atmo because the lung icon zeroes out and I pass out. And luckily I fall into an area with oxygen. So I pick myself up, I go back out into space and watch my oxygen level slowly deplete. I reboard and I notice the oxygen isn't going up, or if it is, it's really slow. So I take the helmet off and my suit reads 0 oxygen. Put the helmet back on and the oxygen icon flashes for a second and shows it filling up, but the suit only fills up to 81%. It has gone up 1% though, so oxygen is actually a consumable now. It takes a really long time to deplete, but it raises the question of, is there a way to refill it faster if you needed to, which would be a super rare occasion that most people won't encounter at the rate that it goes up and down. I gotta add in that in the few minutes I took to gather my thoughts here, the oxygen went up to 95%, so it doesn't seem likely to ever be a problem, except maybe in an emergency situation. Take a look at this vid to check out a huge new feature which we should start seeing development begin on soon. Big cookies and cream shout out to all my execs, Patreons, YouTube members, and super chatters. Your support is very much appreciated. Fly dirty citizens.